After 13 years, the UN arms embargo on Iran was lifted in October 2020. But not everyone agreed with this. The US Secretary of State has argued that the embargo should be extended. To support this position, the US has cited the case of a dhow known as the Bari 2, which was seized while reportedly transporting arms from Iran to the Houthi insurgents in Yemen. It was the 10th such international naval seizure since September 2015. However, it's unlikely that reinstating UN arms restrictions would be effective at deterring the kind of sophisticated transnational network responsible for the Bari 2 smuggling operation. To understand why, we first need to look at what happened with the Bari 2. The vessel departed the port of Berbera, Somaliland, during the first week of June 2020. It was destined for Iran. En route, it took on 4 crew members from a Yemeni fishing dhow. It's thought that the plan was to transfer its cargo of weapons onto the same fishing dhow on the way back to avoid detection in Yemeni waters. But the Bari 2 was intercepted by Saudi naval forces on 24 June, so that didn't happen. So who did the dhow belong to? According to Global Initiative's investigation, the head of the network responsible for the shipment is a Somali national named Mohammed Omar Salim. Salim has links to an arms supplier in Yemen, Saif al-Hayashi, currently under US sanction for providing arms and financial support to al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. This is the first known arms trafficking network based in Somalia involved in the transfer of arms from Iran to the Houthis. The Iranian government has denied any involvement in the Bari 2 shipment. And this is where the US comes in.
U.S. and partner forces interdicted a vessel off the coast of Yemen with illicit cargo, including 200 RPGs, more than 1,700 AK rifles, 21 surface-to-air and land attack missiles, several anti-tank missiles, and other advanced weapons and missiles. The Security Council must extend the arms embargo on Iran to prevent further conflict in the region. No serious person can possibly believe Iran would use any weapon it receives for peaceful ends.
That was the US Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, speaking in July. The embargo he's talking about are the UN restrictions on the import and export of arms by Iran. Despite Pompeo's protests, these restrictions were lifted in October, in line with the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, also known as the Iran nuclear deal. In fact, the US's attempt to invoke a snapback on sanctions was pretty much ignored by the Security Council, since the US actually pulled out of the nuclear deal in 2018. But let's look at the US's argument more closely.
President Trump understood that the JCPOA was an abject failure. It didn't bring Iran into the community of nations or block Tehran's path to a nuclear weapon. Instead, it was an exercise in appeasement. It gifted the regime billions and paved the way for Iran to become the arms dealer of choice for terrorist groups and dictators all across the world in just 5 short years.
Mike Pompeo has expressed concerns that lifting sanctions will make it easier for Iran to arm its regional proxies, in particular the Houthi movement in Yemen and Hezbollah in Lebanon. After the Houthi takeover of large swaths of Yemen in 2015, Iran was quick to embrace the movement as an ally, offering a counterbalance to Iran's Arab adversaries in the Gulf. When the Houthis attacked a Saudi Aramco oil processing facility in 2019, Iran was blamed for backing the attack, although they have denied involvement. But a ban on the transfer of arms to the Houthis has been in place since 2015 anyway, in accordance with UN Security Council Resolution 2216. It's hard to envision how a continued UN arms embargo on Iran could be effective when the embargo on Yemen itself would not be. It should also be noted that Iran is only one actor fueling the conflict in Yemen. Arms supplied by Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and even the US to Yemeni coalition partners are also believed to be diverted into the illicit sphere. And importantly, it's unlikely that the UN arms restrictions would be effective at deterring transnational networks such as the one responsible for the Bari 2. Instead, an attempt to salvage the Iran nuclear deal would be a more viable strategy towards reducing arms trafficking to the Houthis. Why? Because if the nuclear deal collapses, Iran's national security concerns are likely to push its government into an even closer alliance with its regional proxies. Iran could use the Houthis to threaten the world oil supply and America's Arab allies, in turn protecting Iran for potential US military action. As it stands, public opinion in Iran continues to turn against the nuclear deal. With Iran's next presidential election scheduled for June 2021, a future Biden administration will need to move quickly in order to salvage the deal.